At the start of World War II, 20,000 Chinese Americans served in the U.S. Armed Forces despite nationwide anti-Chinese sentiment at the time. Major General William Chen tells NTD why it's important to honor Chinese American veterans.
Who are we? We are American officers. And so everybody should be looked at as Americans, treated like Americans, working as Americans. And so there shouldn't be any difference.
Major General William Chen, fondly known as Bill Chen, is the first Chinese American to wear the two-star rank of Major General in the U.S. Army. During his 32 years of active duty, he experienced the Cuban Missile Crisis while serving in air defense and participated in multiple overseas combat tours, including in Vietnam and Laos. He is also a main advocate for a Congressional Gold Medal to be awarded to the Chinese American veterans who fought in the U.S. Army during World War II.
They were largely forgotten, ignored, or excluded.
Bill Chen's father, Moon Chen, was a World War II veteran serving in the 1st American Volunteer Group to China, and later the 14th Air Force, known as the Flying Tigers. He was also one of the first witnesses to the Marco Polo Bridge incident on July 7, 1937, which marked the beginning of the Second Sino-Japanese War.
And it happened that my father was flying from Shanghai to Beijing on that very same day, and he saw that fighting at the Marco Polo Bridge. And so immediately he radioed to Nanking the incident, and that probably was one of the first reports of the war, starting with the Japanese.
The next day, Moon escaped from the Japanese by hiding inside a mail truck.
It got stopped by the Japanese at a blockade. The Japanese would open up the mail truck and use bayonets to poke into the mail bags. But luckily, my father was in the back and they didn't find him. But as he was taxiing, the Japanese came and they started firing at the plane. But luckily, the plane was able to take off and he saved the aircraft.
In the book Unsung Heroes, to which Bill Chen was chief editor, countless more stories of people like Moon were recorded. According to Bill, at the start of World War II, about 20,000 Chinese Americans joined the U.S. Army. 40% of them were not U.S. citizens. This was during the time when a federal law banning Chinese laborers from entering the United States was still in effect.
They served, they defended the freedom that we so much enjoy and we so much take for granted. They demonstrated their competencies, loyalty, and patriotism. They served with pride and proudly served as Americans in spite of the discriminatory aspects of the 1882 Chinese Exclusion Act. Through their sacrifice and hard work, they also enabled the follow-on generations to live the American dream.
Through efforts from advocates like Bill, in 2017 legislation was introduced in the U.S. Congress to honor the Chinese Americans who served in World War II with the Congressional Gold Medal. In February this year, the medal was officially awarded to 12 veterans in a virtual ceremony.
Experts are analyzing a massive fish that washed up in Oregon last week. The 100-pound specimen is an opah, also known as a moonfish. According to Seaside Aquarium General Manager Keith Chandler, it's rare to see moonfish on the Oregon coast, especially not in such good condition. Chandler says the fish had probably been on the beach for less than an hour before the aquarium found out about it. The species is a deep-sea fish, so little is known about it. Experts at the aquarium plan to dissect the moonfish and learn as much as they can. Coming up, 22 bridges destroyed in China. This due to heavy rains causing major reservoirs to burst in China's Inner Mongolia region. South Korea's comfort women are losing their will to carry on with their aims. Only 14 survivors still live in South Korea. All that and more here on NTD News. Heavy rains are hitting China's Inner Mongolia region. Areas with the most downpour saw nearly 9 inches of average rainfall. The rain caused 2 major reservoirs to burst, flooding over 50,000 acres of farmland. NTD's Tiffany Meyer has more on the story.
Two major reservoirs have burst in China's Inner Mongolia region. Heavy rains led to the structure's failure, destroying 22 bridges. Authorities have since issued an emergency response. According to China's Ministry of Water Resources on Monday, heavy rains hit some parts of northern China over the weekend. Average rainfall topped 3 inches, while areas with the most downpour received almost 9 inches. The two reservoirs collapsed on Sunday, failing to contain the excessive flooding. The resulting overflow flooded over 50,000 acres of farmland. Many houses are now submerged. Videos of the scene shows cars struggling to move through the deep water. Nearly 20,000 residents have felt the flood's impact. Chinese state-run media outlets have not reported any casualties, though we can't verify that independently. One local explained that nearby crops were destroyed, but houses seem okay. She told a Chinese media outlet that most cell phone signal is down in her village. Only one carrier service is still active, and phone calls go through intermittently.
Teachers and public servants in many provinces across China are ordered to return their bonuses to authorities. Their future bonuses are also suspended. Analysts say this may indicate that local governments in China are on the brink of bankruptcy.
A growing number of Chinese local authorities are asking their public servants and teachers to give back the bonuses they earn. This is happening across many provinces, both in financially stable Guangdong and in relatively impoverished Jiangxi. Senior media professional Huang Jinchu takes it as a sign that local governments are in heavy debt.
The local authorities will offend public servants by doing so. But why do they have to do it anyway? That's because the local treasuries are too poor.
Among them, Dixing City in Guangxi Province is asking teachers to return both their seasonal and year-end bonuses on the same day. According to US-based Radio Free Asia, that amount exceeds a teacher's total annual salary, and this is only a tip of the iceberg. Public data showed that China's fiscal deficit rate grew by 30% in the first half of 2020, and local debt surged by almost $530 billion. Among China's 31 provinces and special municipalities, only Shanghai has a fiscal surplus. The Chinese Finance Ministry says the country's 2021 budget deficit will continue to rise. According to Huang, the root cause of the local government's struggling situation has to do with China's 1994 tax sharing reform. The reform largely restructured the tax allocation system between the central and the local governments. Huang regards the reform as evil because it basically benefits the central regime at the cost of local regions.
The core of the tax sharing reform is to drain almost all local revenue, say 80%, to the revenue pool of the central government.
According to Huang, the reform not only results in local poverty, but also forces local authorities to adopt many bad policies, such as arbitrary traffic fines. That's because they have to collect local revenue through other means.
Fighting disease, death, and disillusionment, members of South Korea's rapidly dwindling Sisterhood of Surviving Comfort Women say they're facing the twilight of their lives with diminished camaraderie and will to wage political battles.
Lee Ok-son is one of the surviving South Korean comfort women who were forced into Japanese brothels in World War II. Fighting disease, death, and disillusionment, this group of women say they are facing the twilight of their lives. They have lobbied for compensation and apologies from the Japanese government for years. But they say the will to wage political battles is dying down. Yi is 91 and has been bedridden for years. She was forcibly taken to the brothels aged 16.
I just wish I could live in peace for one single day.
Only 14 of the 240 registered survivors are still alive in South Korea. Some historians estimate up to 200,000 Korean girls and women were forced to provide sex to Japanese troops during the colonial era, sometimes under the pretext of employment or to pay off a relative's debt. After over 8 decades, Kang Il-chul still fights back tears when she remembers her past.
They treated Koreans worse than dogs. They kicked and beat me up. There are still scars here.
The issue of comfort women has been a fixture of South Korean politics and diplomatic relations between Seoul and Tokyo since 1991, when Kim Hak-son first came forward to publicly testify her experience. Under a 2015 deal, Tokyo issued an official apology and provided $9.3 million to a fund that helps comfort women victims, with both sides promising to irreversibly end the dispute. But South Korea effectively backed out of the deal after some victims said they had been overlooked. One major organization that advocated for the women was brought down by a corruption scandal last year. And in April, a South Korean court dismissed a case some of the women brought against Tokyo. But for prominent activist and victim 92-year-old Lee Yong-soo, the fight is not over.
I am determined not to die before I resolve this. I need to be alive as much as 200 years to resolve this.
Japan's Ministry of Foreign Affairs did not immediately respond to requests for comment.
Next, the European Space Agency